This video is brought to you by my two friends and first two Patreons, BJ Holland and David Artsivasilis. You guys are actually insane.
The prestigious field of architecture is not just for the artist. Engineers can also greatly influence the direction our cities take, and no engineer has done this more than Gustave Eiffel. As a man that could bend iron, he was a creation of his times, when science and engineering started taking center stage in modern life. Did he like croissants? Why did he like steel so much if he was a civil engineer? And what is up with Eiffel not creating the Eiffel Tower? Find out in this episode on Huco Design, where we look at Gustave Eiffel, the magician of iron.
Alexander Gustave Eiffel was born in 1832 in Dijon, which lays in the Côte d'Or, a region that the best chocolate brand ever is also named after. Eiffel was the first child of Catherine Melanie and Alexander Bonnickhausen. His grandfather and mother had immigrated from Germany and had changed their last names to Eiffel as a reference to the Eiffel Mountains, which lay in the region they'd come from.
This wouldn't be the last time their family would define themselves by great heights.
The family had been known for their charcoal business, which the mother of Eiffel had inherited. Due to both his parents working full-time, the young Gustave grew up mostly in the care of his grandmother, though the bond he had with his mum remained strong.
At this time, Eiffel wasn't very well known for being a studious child, which I can certainly relate to. But in his last 2 years, he's changed his attitude around and was accepted into 2 prestigious schools.
He decided to go to the École Centrale des Arts et Manufactures, an institute known for engineering and science. In his later years, he specialized in chemistry, nerd, and graduated in 1855 as the 13th best student from a total of 80.
After graduating, his career can be described as being pretty, crappy.
He firstly wished to work for his uncle, who had taught him a lot and was a very positive influence on him, but his hopes were crushed by family fights. Working instead for his brother-in-law as an unpaid assistant, great family right there, Eiffel finally got his first job as a secretary. Even as crappy as this job was for a graduated engineer from a prestigious university, he was in luck, because this company went bankrupt soon after. Charles Nouveau, who had originally provided him employment, helped him out, and soon he got his first engineering job.
His first project was quite a thing, as he was tasked with designing a sheet iron bridge. This would start a trend that would follow him throughout the rest of his career.
The next project, which was for a 500-meter bridge spanning the river Garonne, saw Eiffel take over the managing role from Nouveau after his retirement. This project used revolutionary techniques, such as the use of air caissons, which are watertight structures to allow for easier creation of foundations, and hydraulic ramps were used for the pumping out of water that would build up in these caissons.
This project would elevate him to a higher status in the engineering field, and soon he was receiving projects left and right.
He became the principal engineer of the Belgian wing of the business, but soon saw the writing on the wall as the company began to decline. He left in 1865 and set up his own independent consultancy firm.
Like a true Thomas the Tank Engine fan, he kept working with tracks and trains.
He was contracted to supervise the construction of 33 locomotives for Egypt as the Suez Canal was being constructed, as well as creating 2 railway stations at Toulouse and Aachen. The Toulouse station was designed in collaboration with Marius Tudoir. It is likely that Eiffel was not responsible for the design of the exterior facade and focused mostly on the structural elements, such as the roofing on the inside. Very pretty trusses there, Eiffel. My compliments. I couldn't find any information on the Aachen station, but having a look at the roofing structure, it's clear that Eiffel definitely did that part.
So far, one can honestly say that Eiffel hadn't created any real architecture work. But this is where the interesting debate starts on what is and isn't architecture.
Eiffel saw beauty in his engineering marvels. Can one think that because we are engineers, beauty doesn't preoccupy us, or that we do not try to build beautiful as well as solid and long-lasting structures? Aren't the genuine functions of strength always in keeping with unwritten conditions of harmony? Besides, there's an attraction, a special charm in the colossal to which ordinary theories of art do not apply. Rijkswaterstaat, the Dutch authority on roads and water defenses, names their structures art pieces. And are they wrong? I don't have an answer to this, but it's important to note that the work Eiffel was created at the time was unprecedented. The Europeans were known for their extraordinary engineering skills, which were only accelerated by the Industrial Revolution. His structures were not necessarily pretty in the traditional sense of using complementing material choices or interesting forms, but Eiffel's works were beautiful by the nature of the skills that were required to create them.
Eiffel soon started showing that he was more than just an engineer, however, when he created the San Marcos Cathedral in Chile.
This church was made almost fully out of iron and firstly fabricated in France before being shipped in pieces to Arica, Chile, then owned by Peru. I honestly find it quite fun looking. The white coloring was a great way to avoid heat, but the styling gives me a very gingerbread house in real life vibe. The closest I could describe this style to is Gothic Revival, but I'm not certain.
Things changed quickly, however, when Eiffel created a partnership with Theo Seyrich, a German engineer.
Together they created the Budapest Nugati station, which is, in my opinion, a perfect unity between engineering and architecture. This type of railway station can be classified as a terminus station, which means trains go no further than this place. This often allows architects more freedom and space to create a facade, and they truly did it justice. The two structures on either side serve as departures and arrivals. All around these two areas there's an immense amount of detailing and dedication put into them. Quite rightly so for a place that at the time was the only main ways of entering the city. The buildings are covered in different patterns and decorations to make them pop. Then one comes to the arch in the middle. Looking at the intense structures on either side, the triangle gives a sense of peace and quiet to the whole structure and relieves it from becoming too exhausting. When I first saw the middle structure, I thought it had been constructed much later on, but Eiffel, as a true visionary, showed that you can do glass facades and make them not boring. You can make them not boring! The structure of the iron within the glass actually matches with the buildings on either side, and the toppings and little crosses at the tops keep the glass framing interesting and unique. Bravo is all I can say to this gorgeous building. Eiffel later also created the internal structures of the Statue of Liberty, when France and America were still on best terms through their hatred of the British. This internal structure was quite hard to make, due to the horizontal wind forces that would push against the massive lady.
The statue was first assembled in France, before being shipped to the
USA! USA! USA!
I've talked so much about everything else so far. I'm sure you're dying to learn about the one erect structure that defines Paris.
Well, most surprising to learn, and the best clickbait ever, is that the tower named after Eiffel himself wasn't even designed by him, but originated from his employees. Maurice Koelling and Émile Nourguet are the ones who discussed the construction of the metal masterpiece for the 1889 Exposition Universelle. This exposition was created to celebrate the 100-year anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. The purpose was to show the greatness that France had become. Eiffel wasn't a big fan of the idea, but after some decorations were added, he bought the patent and rolled with it.
Eiffel has a tower named after him when he didn't even create the original vision and design for the tower. How nuts is that?
A plaque was put on the top of the tower with the names of the two initial designers on there to appreciate their contribution. Not only the art of the modern engineer, but also the century of industry and science in which we are living, and for which the way was prepared by the great scientific movement of the 18th century and by the revolution of 1789, to which this monument will be built as an expression of France's gratitude. Eiffel struggled selling the tower at first, but with the re-election of Jules Grévy as president and his appointment of Edouard Lecroy as Minister of Trade, progress began to be made, and money was dedicated to the Exposition Universelle. With this, the rules of the centerpiece of the exhibition were also changed when Lecroix was blown away by Eiffel's idea. Every centerpiece had to be a study for a 300-meter tall structure, which obviously favored Gustave.
As you may know, the Eiffel Tower was incredibly controversial when it was first suggested. Artists all across Paris rose up in protest.
We, writers, painters, sculptors, architects, and passionate devotees of the heretofore untouched beauty of Paris, protest with all our strength, with all our indignation, in the name of the slighted French taste, against the erection of this useless and monstrous Eiffel Tower. To bring our arguments home, imagine for a moment a giddy, ridiculous tower dominating Paris like a gigantic black smokestack, crushing under its barbaric bulk Notre Dame, the Tour Saint-Jacques, the Louvre, the Dôme à la Invalides, the Arc de Triomphe. All our humiliating monuments will disappear in this ghastly dream, and for 20 years we shall see stretching like a blot of ink the hateful shadow of the hateful column of bolted sheet metal.
Damn, that's a bloody good piece of writing.
The protest that was set up is very similar to the controversies I described in the Gaudi video. The rise in industry pushed artists and craftsmen from their status in society, replaced by scientists and engineers.
The Eiffel Tower is a direct embodiment of this. It literally has the names of scientists planted upon it with large bold letters to respect their contributions to the field of science.
Despite the protests, construction would proceed. The structure consisted of 2.5 million rivets and 12,000 other components. The drawing office produced 1,700 general drawings and 3,629 detailed drawings. Insane to consider this was done without any digital modeling. Construction started in the same year his wife passed away in 1887. The structure was completed on the 31st of March 1889 and remained the tallest structure till 1930. The tower is a monument to the engineering skills of Eiffel and a showing that engineering truly can be considered beautiful.
After a controversy with the Suez Canal, Eiffel retired, but he devoted the rest of his life to the pursuit of science.
Particularly spending a lot of time on aerodynamics, for which he even built his own wind tunnel. He also spent more time on finding a functional purpose for the Eiffel Tower. This would later culminate in the installation of a radio mast, which would be installed in 1898. These first Morse code messages would serve as the savior of the tower and cemented Eiffel's legacy. After his many contributions to science and engineering, Gustave bid farewell to this world on the 27th of December 1923 at the age of 91. He closed his eyes for good whilst listening to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony in his mansion en Rue Rabelais in Paris.
Eiffel, much like Gaudi, were a reaction to their times. The Industrial Revolution had shifted the cultural space for engineers as well as artists.
Whereas Gaudi stood in open rebellion to the changes, Eiffel embraced them. He showed the world for the first time that engineering could also be beautiful. Nowadays we marvel at the sophisticated towers and bridges we can create, but back then this hadn't been established yet. Eiffel's work shows that we can find beauty in the colossal and details and organic movement in stiff steel constructions. Structures don't have to be massive solid pieces to be amazing. They can be light and weightless.
Lastly, Gustave Eiffel told me that architecture is not reserved for the people who just study forms, materials and compositions at university.
The creation of beauty is one that can be pursued by anyone, and the market and people will decide what they fancy. Perhaps there's even an argument to be made that engineers have more power in the form of skills to create things that wouldn't be possible to be made by the average architect. The Eiffel Tower is a beautiful manifestation of that. The structure was a marvel of engineering, but also of beauty in my opinion. This is something Eiffel also believed and will pursue for most of his life.
Thank you very much for watching this video on Gustave Eiffel. Please leave a like or a dislike and subscribe to the channel to learn about Danish architecture. You can also subscribe to my Patreon, which will give you access to all the posters I create for each video, as well as getting a chance to receive one of the original drawings made for this video. Thank you very much for watching and have a lovely day.